Hi, I'm Shrankhla, the founder and CEO of Uma, an Ayurvedic beauty and wellness collection. This is the Uma Ayurveda podcast. Each week, I'll be having a conversation with someone I greatly admire on the topics of Ayurveda, holistic healing, spiritual well-being, and alternative health. By sharing wisdom, I hope to share a personal truth and revelation with you that as ancient as they are, Ayurveda and other healing modalities are as modern and relevant today as ever. Today I'll be speaking with Stacey Lindsay, a distinctive multimedia journalist who I've had the privilege of knowing both as a friend and a colleague at Uma. Stacey has had a storied editorial career that includes Goop, being a news anchor and reporter, and serving as the editorial director for The Conscious Investor, an organization that I'm a huge fan of. Stacey also has had a fascinating journey with Ayurveda over the last few years, and I've so enjoyed talking and working together with someone who not only has a passion and gift for research and storytelling, but also has had first-hand experience on how rich and transformational Ayurveda can be. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hi.
Hi, Shrankhla.
How are you, Stacey?
I am doing well. How are you holding up?
Good, all things considered. I am very excited to be chatting about Ayurveda with you. Of course, I should caveat that with formally chatting Ayurveda since we talk about it every day.
We really do. And that's kind of been one of the most profound parts of this journey for me, is that ever since I've started on this journey and we've been continuing this conversation between the two of us, Ayurveda is really, it touches everything in my day to day. So it is kind of becoming the default for me, which I love.
And it is great and gratifying and in a weird way, very encouraging to see that resonate with people. In fact, in the time that you've been practicing Ayurveda, I have to say it's been personal fuel for me to do some of the things I've always known that I should be doing, but it's almost like working out with a buddy or something. In terms of its practice.
I have to say that, yes. And you kind of see something with fresh eyes when you invite somebody else to take part. Obviously, we all have our own perspectives, and this has been a part of your life since day one, of course, and this is something relatively new for me. So I can imagine that. That's probably really cool, just to have somebody sort of put a light on things that you may, I don't want to say take for granted, but may have kind of forgotten about a little bit, because there's so many facets to the ancient science.
I think there is a little bit of taking for granted that happens. And within Ayurvedic wisdom, I think that's fine. Because just this morning, I was explaining to someone what Ayurveda is. And I found myself saying that it's not so much a prescription as a guidance. And in
Yes.
so much beauty in that it's liberating, that you can do 2 things or you can do 25 things, and all of us are okay wherever we are on that spectrum.
So what would you say then? What does Ayurveda mean to you today?
It's a great question because I have found that the question has evolved over the years, and at some point of my life, I would have said it's a lifestyle, it's cultural, it's very much part of my routine. And this is probably a reflection of where I am currently in my life, but it's a great beacon of solace and direction in some senses. In that, maybe for many years I practiced Ayurveda just in routine format, but recently I think Ayurveda has been something that I have turned to seek a lot more solace than and direction than I ever did in the past. So that's when you asked me that question, it sort of suddenly came to me rather than something I had thought about before. So that is interesting in that it's helping carry me through and right now, and perhaps it'll change in another few years and go back to the old ways or evolve into something different. What does Ayurveda mean to you?
That's beautiful that you say that because so much of that resonates because I feel it has an ability to make you feel quite grounded. I look at Ayurveda as really, it's an invitation. It's been this incredible, consistent invitation. And what I mean by that is it's an invitation for me to get to know myself and to really, really understand myself somatically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I've never understood myself better than I have this past year since practicing Ayurveda. And it's also, I love you use the word beacon, and I feel that same way. It's really been such a beacon of hope. I've never, Shrankhla, ever felt connected with any other wellness protocol or wellness system. I think there's beautiful facets to all of them, but I've just never really connected with any of them until I discovered the ancient science, Ayurveda, and just the entire science and philosophy behind it has opened my eyes to the beauty of really being me and really understanding my uniqueness. Because for so long, I kind of felt like an outsider. I think we all sort of maybe struggle with that at some point of our lives. Like we never really feel like we fit in, or this certain thing doesn't really give us the wellness answers that we need. Ayurveda is just so generous. It invites you to be you and to just understand you. So I think there's such incredible beauty in that, but also it's like a breath of fresh air. Finally, I realized, oh, okay, this is actually, I don't really like using the word normal, but this is normal because I'm unique. We're all unique and we're always changing. So it's, yeah, it's been this wonderful, exciting invitation. I love it.
Circle back to the term invitation because I feel like we should unpack that because it is such a brilliant classification of how we come to that journey of Ayurveda. But I want to round out what you just said by something that, again, you and I chat about in that the power of Ayurveda to be so intuitive feeling
Mm-hmm.
is so appealing in that it keeps driving you back to the fact that all the answers you need are within you and that you need to listen to your body more, which I think, especially in the world we live in, where you're constantly sometimes questioning the motives of a philosophy or a product or things that are being presented to you and wondering, what's going on here? What might be the catch? The fact that Ayurveda keeps driving to your own intuition and listening to your body that has evolved over 5,000 years is really quite beautiful and powerful. But coming back to the question of invitation, in as much as you'd like to share, Stacey, I'd love to hear about, and I'm sure everyone else does as well, about what spoke out to you. Was it the science itself? Was it a place in your life? I'd love to hear more about that.
It was sort of a meeting of several things. It's always intrigued me. It's always sort of been in the back of my mind, something that I wanted to unpack further. I've been, as I said, intrigued by it for a really long time. But I think just this past year, ultimately, you were a huge part getting to know the Uma brand more and doing collaborations with you, working with you. That was a huge part of why I decided to really lean into it. And quite honestly, too, it's extremely personal, but it's something that's really important. And I've been starting to talk about since I've been practicing Ayurveda. Is I have faced an eating disorder in my adult life, and it's something that's came into my adult life in my early 30s. And this is something that started to happen to me when I was a broadcast journalist and I was on TV. It's been a real hard battle, and I decided, I really I always wanted to conquer it, but I really, really, really wanted to start to unpack it, understand what was behind it. And that was the ultimate trigger for me. I decided I want to look in to see if Ayurveda can help me with this, and then ultimately help me explore so many other parts of my wellness journey. And that has been probably the most profound thing. As I've already mentioned, it's really helped me understand myself better. It's been profound. And I never, ever I had hope going into it, of course, but I never expected that it would actually impact me positively this much. Because again, it impacts you on every level, physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally too. And I think that we have to really consider that for anything that we're going through in life. All of those facets need to be honored.
Thank you for sharing that because my observation, and I want to put it carefully, is that since moving to the United States, I think I have practiced less emotional release.
Right.
And in recent years, realized that I was doing less of that and practicing it more. And what you just shared and did, that is a very, very important part of Ayurveda, as you now know, that emotional release is the most important part of detoxifying your body, because pent up
Mhm.
emotions lead to actual toxins in your body per Ayurveda. But I have to acknowledge that especially in my professional career in a more traditional role as my consulting job and in business school, there was definitely an element of less free speech around emotion and being able to talk about things that were uniquely mine, the good or the stuff that was more challenging, is something that took work on being able to do again, as I had done maybe in my former life where I felt a little bit more free. But it definitely is something that I have to remind myself to work on, because I mean, we're all so unique in the emotional journeys that we are on. And it's just law of averages or something that we all must have vulnerabilities, which talking about can help us make more sense of. But it is sometimes stigmatic to be emotional in many ways. And I think sometimes as women, and I go on a little bit of a segue, it becomes even harder. Of course, one can argue that socially, men have been conditioned to never talk about it, but also as women in the workforce, we sort of maybe go toe to toe with our male counterparts and sometimes deny ourselves the emotional urge to release stuff that we might be thinking about, might be struggling with, might be happy about. And that's something that is a core tenet of Ayurveda, in that emotions must be observed with the respect that they deserve and then released.
Absolutely. And it's important because it gives credence to everything too. And I think there's so much, it's sort of the head down, hardworking, hustling mentality that is endemic, really, I think, to America, that we know we're starting to talk about how it's really impacting us in a negative way. You hear about burnout, you hear about all of these things that are happening. But still, we're still not giving the things credence that we need to give. It's almost, if we don't see it, out of sight, out of mind, or out of sight, just push it away. So of course, maybe you can't actually see your emotions, but it doesn't mean that they're not valid. And it doesn't mean that they're not as important as maybe if you, of course, if you broke your arm, oh my gosh, you'd rush to the doctor right away. But if you weren't emotionally feeling stable, or if you were feeling like you had pent up anger or whatnot, maybe you wouldn't rush to the doctor right away. And that's unfortunate, because that really builds, and it manifests in unique ways, unique to all of us. But it can ultimately can manifest in whether it is some sort of a disorder, some sort of a sickness, some sort of a disease. But just giving that credence, and the same too with your spiritual well-being, that should be, and it is in Ayurveda, just as important, because we're all really unique, convoluted beings, and that is what makes us whole. It's not just the physicality behind us, it's everything else.
And even though what I'm going to say is sort of maybe a business oriented or a leadership oriented way of looking at that. But Stacey, I have found within this journey of entrepreneurship that I am my best when I am allowing the time and the courage to lean into my emotions. So I'll give, I mean, examples of 2 days that can be widely different in way of the quote unquote impact I have had on even my work or my personal relationships. the day that I have left myself the room to connect spiritually or emotionally with what's going on and really leaned into some of that rawness, are the days I can categorically say I have been more impactful, whether it is in forging a relationship with a business associate, or talking to my sister about something and getting her excited about a facet of her life. I just feel like those moments and those days are so much more powerful and memorable, and leave behind a positive impact than days that I have just been quote unquote grinding. As in perfect honesty, I do end up having many of those days, but they don't shine bright quite like the other days.
That's incredibly important to talk about that too, and so powerful. And what is so interesting about that too is there's actually recent Western research that supports that, which I almost wonder sometimes. I think about, 5,000 years ago, and the people originally practicing this and who are writing the Vedic texts, they're probably laughing, going, told you so. We've known this for thousands of years. But there's actually recent research that supports that when people genuinely take time off, not just kind of taking a half a day, but checking email, really take time off to, whether it is nourish your personal relationships, go on a real legitimate vacation, be with your best friends, all of that, you're actually so much more productive and efficient, impactful, and successful while you're working, when you go back to work.
I couldn't agree more. Yes, in every sense of the word, and it's become more and more practically visible to me as life has gone on. Stacey, what were some of the resources that you found really helpful in your journey?
Yeah, there's some great books out there. Dr. Vasant Lad he's this sage in Ayurveda, and really has been such a big part of bringing it here and making it prominent in the United States. I highly recommend any of his books. My partner was so kind to get me several of his books for Christmas, and I devoured them. And it's interesting because I kind of keep them, they're strewn all over my home. So I'll just pick one up and sometimes I'll just pick one up and read a random page because it just gives me a dose of wisdom. And sometimes if there's something specific going on, or we're approaching a new season and I want to give myself sort of a tutorial, I'll read a page from his book. But those have been amazing resources. And I did have a formal consultation with a practitioner in Los Angeles. Her name is Sheila. I credit so much to her. I recommend sitting and getting a formal consultation with a practitioner, somebody who's accredited, so they can really help you unpack your history and kind of unpack your journey going forward, and just to see where you should dive into Ayurveda, and what aspects you want to start to weave into your life, and you can really take it slow. But that consultation mixed in with the reading, and of course I'm so interested in it, and when I've seen the change, like anything, when you start to see results, that just feeds your curiosity even more. So as I've been noticing, as I've just been feeling brighter and feeling like I'm more connected to myself, and definitely has helped my anxiety, I'm voraciously reading about it more and more.
And I am such a huge fan of Dr. Vasant Lad. I love that there is not a single compromise on the authenticity
Yes.
of Ayurveda, but yet I think it's a very inviting, warm exploration of how we apply it to modern life. That's what makes his work very, very compelling. And I think it's a great call out, Stacey, in that your journey is usually stepwise. And I keep saying this, and people who've heard me elsewhere will chuckle at how often I repeat myself. But what is great about Ayurveda is you can be anywhere on the spectrum. So that's a great place to start out. But I think in many ways, a consultation can be that next step jump, because very often during a conversation with a group, or an Instagram live, I get asked, so how can I figure out my dosha? And I always have this answer, which I know is not gratifying, that well, an online quiz will take you 40 or 50% of the way there, because there are many things that we can tell about our bodies by looking at external manifestations of our doshas. But truly, what a doctor can do for you, of course it has to be a good doctor, but what a doctor can do for you in terms of understanding your dosha is a step change in how you start to then apply those principles to your body. Because sometimes when you're going off of a reading of the internet, you run into the minor issue that you are showing signs of the dosha in your body that is out of balance, as can be the case right now. For instance, a lot of us would present some vata disturbances because of the environment we are in. And a lot of us are feeling anxious. So it's easy to think, oh, because I am so anxious right now, or I'm not sleeping well, I must be vata. But a doctor can really help you unpack that, whether it was just a seasonal or an environmental imbalance in the vata dosha, while you're really a pitta or a kapha, versus whether that is your predominant dosha. So I agree. It's a great place to start with Dr. Vasant Lal. God knows I love him, and I think as you get deeper, it's good to get in for a consultation if you can.
That's so important. I love that you say that you can start anywhere, though, because that is the biggest thing. It's human nature almost to just think, okay, I will start this when I am in this place, or I just need 2 more weeks and then I'm going to start this. No, Ayurveda is so generous that you can start anytime. You can start right after listening to this conversation. You can start right now. And in a lot of ways too, you probably may not even realize it, but you most likely are incorporating Ayurveda into your lifestyle already. You can just start to sort of unpack that more. But it's amazing. You don't have to be any particular place. Right now is what we have, and it's so beautiful. And right now is the best moment to start to get to know yourself more and to start discovering Ayurveda.
The impact you see from the journey can also be different. For instance, the idea or the practice of tongue scraping can give you immediate results. I mean,
Yes.
once you sort of clean your tongue or scrape it with a tongue scraper, it's a huge difference in oral hygiene off the bat that day. So versus, a panchakarma, which will take you a few weeks, but really rewire and reset your balances. So, but there are things that really get you that instant gratification of impact. Not that that is Ayurveda's goal, but you're right in that you can start anytime.
Those small wins, they've studied the neuroplasticity and how we form new habits. And if we have these grand goals, it can be really intimidating and it can actually cause us to be petrified. But if we start in small ways, that's how we really retrain our brains and we start building upon those. And Ayurveda is amazing because there's, again, a million small ways that you can start. And tongue scraping is amazing because it's so simple. It's so affordable. You just get one simple tongue scraper that costs nothing. And you do, as you said, Shrankhla, you notice it right away. And I also love it because it helps with oral hygiene overall, but it really actually has a profound impact on how you eat too. It helps with the sensitivity, how you feel your food, how you experience your food. Studies have shown that it actually can help with how you taste your food too. You can taste your food better. And again, we're talking like how long does it take to scrape your tongue in the morning?
I don't think I picked up a toothbrush before I picked up a tongue scraper, but I want to say under 20 seconds.
Yes, yeah. And it will impact the rest of your day. It's awesome.
Really is. And building on that, Stacey, I I know you just debunked a few myths around Ayurveda by calling out that you can start anywhere. But are there other myths that you have found that maybe you wrangled with before approaching Ayurveda, or have heard others talk about as they start this journey?
The biggest one that I have heard and that I faced myself 2 years ago as I was interested in it is this misconception that it's convoluted, that it's hard, that it's sort of, oh, all or nothing. And that is totally not true. Again, all we've been talking about this for the past several minutes. You can just start any place. You can start with any aspect of it, big or small. It's not, it's actually really, really, really simple. And of course, you can build on it. And there's really interesting, as you build on the science and you learn more, some of it might become a little bit more convoluted and you look to the expertise of a practitioner or a doctor, but it's quite simple and it's totally, totally malleable. And that's the best part. It doesn't have to be intimidating. It doesn't have to be like, oh my gosh, I just have to give up this or give up that. And that's probably the other thing too. Now that I think about it, is that's when it comes to an Ayurvedic diet, I think a lot of people think I have to give up a lot. I have to sacrifice. There's no sacrificing. I did not sacrifice anything. It was not like, okay, I'm going in and my practitioner said I need to cut out this, this, this. Yes, she did make recommendations for certain things that I should try not to eat and certain things that I should eat more of that are good for my constitution, my dosha. But I just naturally felt like I gravitated more toward those foods anyways. And it made sense because, for instance, I never really liked eating salads. They just never left me feeling good. They didn't really leave my digestion feeling good. And so when she started recommending more nourishing, warmer foods for me, I didn't feel like I was giving up on anything. So you, and that is huge too. It is tough. I don't know if it's an American thing or a Western culture thing, but it is really tough when you're looking at something and you know it's going to benefit you, but you feel like you have to sacrifice. No one wants to do that, because you want to enjoy your life. So Ayurveda is not about sacrificing. It's actually about leaning into the things that work better for you and leaning into the things that nourish you. And my experience is just naturally the things that didn't work for me, they just melted away.
And to just get a little bit provocative with that, what may have been your least favorite part of this journey of Ayurvedic living?
Oh gosh, I mean, getting real. You got to go deep. And it's funny. I have a dear friend, and she's been a big part of my support system in this journey too. She's always been very interested in Ayurveda and practiced it. And she told me, she said, Stacey, you're not going deep enough. I said, what are you talking about? I go deep, I mean, I'm a journalist. I ask questions. I go deep with people. And this has sort of been a huge part of my career too, writing about wellness, interviewing people about wellness. She's right. You need to really be willing to go deep. And what I mean by that is to really get to know yourself. And it's so fantastic once you just let yourself go and let yourself really, really get to know yourself. But I would have to say, it was definitely uncomfortable. That's tough for us. We want to be comfortable all the time. And I think sort of the routine and what we know, we just lean toward that. What we don't know, we'll kind of leave it over there. Unpacking what we don't know and going deep. It was intense, Shrankhla. It was.
I couldn't agree with you more vociferously on that. In At the top of this conversation, we talked about release, but and maybe I made it sound very easy or maybe theoretically easy, but it's not. It's years of bad habits, emotional bad habits that get sticky and
Yeah.
difficult to let go of, even though you start to realize the self harm that comes from that. But you're completely right. And I hadn't thought of that as I asked you the question. I was wondering what has been hard for me. But you're completely right. At bottom, Ayurveda asks you to dig in deeper and deeper and strengthen your journey, whether it's uh, through the practices of cleaning your tongue or practicing self abhyanga or dry brushing. But it all goes back to the idea of self exploration and self love, and that is harder to do without
Yes.
sounding trite or cheesy. But it's harder to do than most of us give it credit.
And ultimately so worth it too. Very, very, very hard to do. You're right that harder than we give it credit, and also the most worthwhile thing to do, I think, in life for yourself.
Exactly. And I think that's why it's important to celebrate the little wins uh, that come from endorsing those emotions, whether it is to just stop showing up for gatherings that do not work well for you. I don't particularly have social anxiety, but there are situations where there are gatherings that I just take nothing away from. And I kept falling into that pattern because I kept avoiding that self connection around just acknowledging that. But my little wins were acknowledging them, not acting on those behavior patterns, and then suddenly recognizing how much more fulfilled I felt by just cutting those little things out. So I think we've to sort of celebrate our emotional wins as we put those patterns we've fallen into, or rather break out of those patterns we've fallen into.
And I'm glad you shared that, because honoring that circles back to what I was talking about several minutes ago about giving credence to certain things. And again, this mentality, this go, go, go and be tough and hustle and all of that. And we are really not honoring. So often we tend to not honor when something just doesn't feel good. We know we have the gift of fear. We know if something feels really scary or something, and of course that our animal instincts come to surface, and we will have to run or whatever we have to do. But when something just, we're not in danger, but we, as you said, a social setting, or maybe it is a particular relationship too, it just, you're not really feeling fulfilled from it, or you're feeling like you're growing or good or positive. So often, I mean, at least for me, and I know a lot of my colleagues and friends, I've just said, oh, Stacey, buck up. You should go to this because everybody else is going to it, or you should like this because you just should. When now I'm realizing, no, I'm going to really honor that. And by doing that, similar to what you said, Shrankhla, I feel like I've released so much more energy, and I just feel better.
Yeah,
So
we
it's
forget to
about,
acknowledge how smart our bodies are.
yeah.
You're acknowledging a feeling or not, if it's nagging away at you, it's among the biggest energy destructors today. So whether you're choosing to face a feeling or not, if it's not serving you, some parts of your body's energy is going towards allaying that feeling. And it's little wonder that everyone I know feels exhausted all the time.
Yeah. Everybody, I know.
There is definitely that. So, Stacey, what dosha are you, and how did you find out?
Vata, and with a little pitta.
I knew
You knew that. And
that.
it's the coolest thing. It really is, because and it continues to be. It's not this sort of one hit wonder where you find out, okay, that's neat. You talk about it a little bit and then it's over. No, I am consistently unveiling things about myself, just understanding that. It is wild, Shrank. It's so awesome. When I sat down with Sheila for my official consultation, and we really walked through, and that talk about, being uncomfortable. It was beautiful and amazing, but talk about going deep and really leaning into that discomfort. It was mind blowing what I learned, but ultimately she was the one who unveiled my true dosha to me. And then ever since, and then from that, just learning about the foods that make me feel good, and the things that when my dosha is out of balance, how that manifests and how that expresses. And my entire life, definitely my entire adult life, anxiety has always been the demon in my life. Now I completely understand. I understand when things get out of balance, and it just all goes back to, okay, I have to take care of this. I have to nourish this more to kind of bring myself back to balance. And then it's cool too when you meet fellow vatas. You're like, oh yeah, you can see, or like a fellow kapha, or
No,
we
I
start to speak each other's language. It's pretty neat.
completely. And I think it's worth calling out that it's sort of like a Myers-Briggs type, right? Like there's no good or bad dosha. It is just recognizing your type and then modifying, or rather optimizing your life and behavior patterns around it, because it takes one of each type to make the world work. And that's Ayurveda's way of beautifully preserving balance in the world. Because I mean, when you get deeper into Ayurveda, you also start to see that the encouragement on balance is not just within yourself, also the universe takes care of balance as a whole. And And it's nice to see that there are so many balancing personalities and dosha types doing that on a daily basis and making the world such a thrilling, amazing, fantastic place to be in when we can take a moment to recognize it.
Well, you're keeping me. I'm so curious now. Well, I do want to say, I want to briefly say that for those who may not know what Vata is, movement, air and space are the two main elements that make up Vata. Shrankla, what is your dosha? I think I know, but
I am Pitta.
you're Pitta,
So
water and fire.
that is correct. And I've known my dosha for a really long time, also because when I was a child, many of the ailments that present out of imbalance were of the pitta nature. Stacey, you know this. I went to boarding school very young, and oftentimes not under sort of the guidance of my parents. I would do things and still do things, even though I'm not under the stewardship of my parents, that I know are not good for my dosha. And I would start to see those issues present themselves first. So temperamentally, I feel like frustration and anger might be the first emotional disturbances that present themselves in me when I am imbalanced. Also, I do struggle with heartburn anytime
Hmm.
I am physically or emotionally out of balance. That's one that shows up pretty quickly in my body. And so I feel like I'm very, very strongly pitta. But with that said, there are times that I have had vata disturbances in my body as well.
Hmm.
I have had periods of feeling very anxious and also kapha. I mean, there are times that, during a bad few weeks, and I've had trouble getting out of bed, knowing that I should be exercising more to sort of balance the kapha out, but feeling the least motivated to
Yes.
do that, because that's another dosha in my body. As we know, all of us have all three doshas while having one dominant one presenting itself. But by and large, most of my quote unquote imbalances have been triggered in within the pitta category, which is what my dominant dosha is.
And that makes sense getting to know you too. I know work is very important to you. And when you are in balance, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there is more intelligence thrives in pittas.
You're completely right. I mean, by and large, if not, or I should say, I've always felt like I've seen you in balance, and you're so incredibly creative, among the most creative minds I know, and that's such a beautiful Vata talent.
Thank you so much. And that's another really fun way to look at Ayurveda, unlocking all the fun that it brings to life is, of course, the big goal is to be in balance and to honor your dosha, honor your constitution. But ultimately, what it unlocks too, that if you, and I love the way it does honor my creativity because I've always really valued that. But of course, if I'm not in balance and I'm going through a hard time or not eating the right foods or whatnot, I'm I feel like the my life of the mind is just on hold and it's really upsetting. So it just motivates me even more to lean into it, to care for myself, to honor everything so I can get back in balance so I can ultimately feel like my creativity thrives again. It's so fun.
It really is. I mean, I hope this conversation makes people a little bit curious around the exploration of Ayurveda, if not go further with it. Stacey, any parting thoughts?
It's fueled some of my relationships too in ways I didn't expect. Of course, I love talking about this with my partner and understanding him more, but also just with friends or just at dinners. Of course, when we're able to have physical dinners again with people, but just any conversations with people. It's such a neat place to talk about if somebody doesn't know about Ayurveda, if somebody is on the journey, and just really, really, really fun. But I hope that everybody can in some form at least consider the invitation to get to know themselves more, because it has been the most profound thing in my life that I've ever done for myself. And I thank you, Shrankhla, for being such a huge part of that.
Well, you give me too much credit, but beautifully and eloquently that I will leave people with that gorgeous invitation to explore the tenets of Ayurveda in their lives. And for our part, we hope to keep bringing you bite-sized, intelligent, informative, provocative pieces of Ayurveda through our journey on Uma Elements. And please look out for more.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like more information on our guests and the additional references during our conversation, please visit us at umaoils.com. That is U-M as in Mary, AOILS.com. And please subscribe to the Uma Ayurveda podcast and share. See you next time.